I suppose the thing that I value most is the opportunity to be a trusted advisor to the CEO. The
Mm.
issue with the consultant is you're coming in and basically you're creating problems for the CEO. You're telling them all the things that are wrong and making their life more difficult. Whereas I think with a fractional, what you're doing is you're coming alongside them and saying, look, bit by bit, we can sort this all out. And I can help you, Mr. CEO or Mrs. CEO, to be more effective in ensuring the other parts of the organization align to what I'm doing around the revenue function in your particular case.
However, the people part is where the magic happens. So that that's my passion, is bringing the people together, and whether that's at a personal level, whether it's one individual that I'm helping grow, or whether it's bringing that, like the work I'm doing in Zimbabwe and Kenya, though, to help other people grow in what they're doing, whatever way it is. That's a passion for me, and I've seen it over and over and over again. That's the thing that makes people work. But certainly in the world I've worked in international businesses, well, any business really, it's about the alignment of people. And so, like you said, if you've got those people that believe in the dream over here and those that say, no, I'm all right, thank you very much, it's how do you bridge that gap? And it's when you get that alignment of vision and sharing those values and sharing as go, my goodness me, that's when you start to see change.
Welcome to the Fractional Frontier, where we explore the future of leadership in today's evolving business landscape. I'm Lorraine Carter, and here with my co-host is Charles McLachlan. And every week we dive deep into the world of high-performing fractional executives and the businesses that leverage them.
Yes, whether you're an experienced fractional leader or a business decision maker seeking top tier talent, this is the place to be for actionable insights, strategies, and stories from the front lines of fractional leadership. Today, we're delighted to welcome our guest, David Parry, who's going to share his insights about navigating the transition from consultant to fractional executive.
So, David, can you briefly tell us about your career as a consultant and what sparked your transition into fractional or portfolio executive work?
Sure, probably not like not the most common route, but I'd worked for 8 or 9 years in a conglomerate, so buying and selling businesses. And so I would go in as a consultant into whatever business they'd acquired, and they were project based, very short term, maybe up to a year, not longer than that. And so they buy a business, we would make it grow, they would take cost out, and then they sell it again, it was great, and they were international businesses. So for me, it was exciting, but it became a repetitive process for me. It wasn't really, you weren't growing anything.
Hmm.
And that really prompted me to leave my then ivory tower. So I had all the trappings of support and so on, and just to leave. And at that point, I had nowhere to go. I mean, I just left because I'd had 8, 9 years of doing it. And I saw the next acquisition as being same old, same old. So I then decided, I didn't actually think of it as fractional working at the time. I just knew I just wanted to take the skills that I'd learned about growing businesses in a different direction. I focused on the IT industry, but the first thing that happened, I got called by a pal in America to come and work in Philadelphia and help him build a business in Philadelphia, which
Oh.
then continued over the next few years on a fractional basis, even though it wasn't intended to be that, but it was then fractional businesses. And then, and so I worked in Philadelphia for 6 to 8 months. They go back to the UK and continued doing that for him. And then, I think by hap chance, I, well, by determination, I'd focus on the IT industry. By hap chance, I got an opportunity to look at an acquisition, for a fairly big IT, half a million, sorry, $500 million IT organization, distribution organization, and they needed to transform one of their businesses. Small business, 10, 11 million turnover, that wasn't performing.
Hmm.
I initially started on I don't know, 3-week, 3-month project.
Hmm.
That's how it started. 8 years later, I was still with the same group, but in many different companies.
Yeah.
And that really kicked off my career in fractional management, fractional leadership in different businesses. The projects tended to last anywhere between 2 to 3 years at a time, but several on go at the same time.
Yeah.
So not full time, part time. And I think I can summarize by saying I ended up optimizing the performance of value, the performance of value of private equity businesses, because that's what these were. They were either underperforming
Yeah.
or not performing in the way that the investors originally wanted. And so that's what I probably worked with, I don't know, 24, 25 companies in the last 20 years doing that kind of work.
When you think about the fractional work, what makes that attractive to you compared to traditional find a problem, fix a problem type consulting?
Exactly. I think you really hit the nail on the head, Charles. The consulting work, it's a bit like the work I was doing in this group Bullo before. You would advise on what needed to be doing. So you would, you do the strategic reviews, you'd come out with the reports and so on. But that was it. It was other people did it. The thing I like about fractional work is you roll your sleeves up and your your neck is on the chopping block, so to speak, in that you are responsible for delivering the outcome. And quite often the engagements that I've had, and more often than not, are success fee based. So I have to deliver the results in order to get paid. Well, not entirely, but certainly a fair chunk of what I do. But it's just it's like instead of in my conglomerate days where we were buying businesses, turning it around and then selling it, so it was a repetitive program. This is about creating long, sustainable value in companies. I absolutely love it when companies grow and they get beyond the barriers, and I've helped them get there, of course. Yeah. So that's it. I think is the accountability that you get in fractional work that's different from typical consulting.
And that would, because one of my questions had been to explain to our listeners who may not be familiar with what a fractional or portfolio executive is and the key differences. But I think you've actually summed them up really well there. And that would be my own experience as well, because when you're involved with an organization over 2, 3 year period or longer, you really get deeply involved and you see results. Whereas rather like yourself, my experience of where you're just consulting, you often feel as you step back and you've given the initial input of what they need to do, it's a bit like, how can they actually implement this?
Yeah.
How can I get them on the right direction where they actually get the results they need? And when you get so much more involved in the business, you can actually really ensure that those outcomes are delivered. And that is really, I think. Is there anything else you'd add to that, Charles, in terms of, because you've done a lot of work in this context?
I suppose the thing that I value most is the opportunity to be a trusted advisor to the CEO. The issue with the consultant is, you're coming in and basically you're creating problems for the CEO. You're telling all the things that are wrong and making their life more difficult. Whereas I think with a fractional, what you're doing is you're coming alongside them and saying, look, bit by bit, we can sort this all out. And I can help you, Mr. CEO or Mrs. CEO, to be more effective in ensuring the other parts of the organization align to what I'm doing around the revenue function in your particular case.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Charles. It's definitely about working with the people in the business. Right, or as a consultant, you're looking out from the outside. I mean, you're still doing that, even if actually you're giving this external perspective.
Yeah.
But you're deeply involved with the people inside the company. You're right. You're part of that team. It's a partnership, I think, in a fractional role.
And do you think that you've had opportunities to do things as a fractional which would never have come to you if you'd just been in your former consulting roles? What
Oh
have
yeah.
you seen that you've really valued?
Uh, I think probably most of the 80% of the companies I've worked with, because the nature of what I do has been an investor buying a company or an owner buying a company, or they're merging several companies together and they need somebody to fix it, or they need it to grow, or they need to go faster, 20 times bigger than it was, or whatever the challenges are. And that is really exciting to get involved in, or companies that are in scale, they want to scale up and want to scale quickly, and they haven't got the perhaps haven't got the wherewithal to employ someone like me full time in their business, but they need that depth of experience and expertise to be able to bring that very quickly and get the results very quickly in the business. Yeah, and that's it. I mean, it's exciting to do that, to help people achieve that level of transfer. I mean, I say to me in the beginning, it's you think, oh well, that was a bit of a fluke, you know, when it happens the first time. 10 times in, and you see it happen the same thing over. And I've got lots of hockey sticks of businesses with remarkable growth. Then you realize that there's actually a structure to it. There is a pattern to the way you can work in a fractional way, which is highly effective.
And you're immensely valuable to the business. Gratifying, because all of us like to see and feel success in terms of those we're working with and to see that they're achieving success. So when you're that involved in the business, it is really exciting to see those outcomes and to see that growth happening in the business at a people level. And that in itself becomes even more motivating to do more of it.
And it's sustained over a long period of time. And obviously, I'm old enough to be doing it for a long time, Lorraine. And what I now see after 20 odd years of doing this kind of work is that my network globally, because all my businesses are international businesses, on a personal level, is extensive.
Yeah.
And so people stay with you. I had one this morning, just call me up out of the blue to say, wish me happy new year. And I haven't worked with them for 5 years.
Totally.
And so that happens because of the nature of fractional roles, because you're helping people achieve, you're helping these businesses turn around, or I get investors that will just make comment on something I put on LinkedIn, perhaps that's just gratifying that they recognize what you've done for them. Yeah. So I mean, I'm sold.
Well, that's that for our listeners is all the really exciting and really attractive part of working as a portfolio fractional executive. But I'm sure, like Charles and I, if we were to reflect on it, could easily articulate in this. What are some of the biggest challenges that you faced when making that leap, or in this kind of work, that would be insightful and useful for our listeners to hear about?
So on a personal level, I think, I mean, I tongue in cheek slightly, but it was going from the ivory tower to nothing.
Yeah,
Um, in the co- and I jest slightly, but going from the world where you can make things happen because you've got an army of people around you to make it happen.
yeah,
When you're in a consultancy or an exec role, into
mm,
the fractional where you haven't got that.
yeah,
In theory, you haven't got it, but in practice, you make it happen. So what you need to do as a fractional person, of course, as we said it earlier on, is build those relationships deep and wide inside that organization very quickly, because that then becomes your resource. It's that you have to work with the people in the business to so you're not some sort of superhero lonely warrior,
yeah.
changing the world. You're actually working with the team of people inside the company. So those are I would say the initial challenges are finding and building those relationships, not just with the CEO of the company,
Mm,
because that's one level, but it's actually the people further inside the business who actually do the day-to-day work.
yeah.
They're the ones that have to trust you. I mean, I'll give a quick example where I won't say the company, but I would with one client for 3 years. But they were in 27 countries,
Mm,
6 regions around the world, and we were making some fairly significant changes. The investor had bought them. The investor thought they should be 10, 15, 20 times larger than they were because of the nature of what they were doing in the market. And the investor was right. One region didn't believe that. So most of the regions around the world did, but one region was doggedly saying, "What's wrong with we're getting 15% growth per annum. So what? What's the big deal here? We're doing okay." And that was challenging. That actually, for me, was more of a challenge than people that were willing to open and willing to embrace change and grow. That's the easy bit, but it's the ones that think, no, we're okay, thanks. And that they can do better. And that takes more effort. That takes more. I won't say challenge, but it's more of an engagement. It's more time invested in those relationships then of course, then when they, I mean, I used to joke about the fact that I could, when I go into a company, first 3 months I think I'm a hero, because I'm some new magical so and so, and then 3 to 6 months I think, oh my goodness, this is hard work, because you're asking them to change. 12 months in, they think I'm a hero again, because then they realize that what they've delivered is, they're getting the growth, they're getting the results, they're getting, higher income, all those things that come out of success for the business. So yeah, it's just going through that first transition, I think, with people is the challenge. I
And
think.
human nature is there's always, I'm sure you've had that experience as well, Charles. There's always people within teams who just don't really like change. They're comfortable with the way things are if they're doing okay. And well, change for some people is very scary too. So you're right. I've had that experience as well, where you have to work a lot harder to bring those other people on that journey with you.
But you know what, Lorraine, I think it's a case of, I remember once in one company where I in my 30s, and I was, knew all the answers to everything in the world, and stood up in front of an audience of 200 odd people inside this company, and selling them the vision. This is where we're going to go, and we can do this and these wonderful things. And then some chaps, this is a manufacturing group, so some chap sat in the audience and said, What did I know about their business? And I won't use his words, but his words, he used a few vernacular, and he was right, really. What did I understand about the nature of their particular organization?
Mhm.
And what I realized then was what you said. Not everybody wants to live your dream. It's your dream, not theirs. And so what you have to come back to is to go back to where they are, and move them incrementally from where they are. Even though you take them on a journey, taking them on a 20, on a marathon when they haven't got out of bed for the last 3 weeks, or haven't gone outside the door and done a walk. You have to start. Start somewhere. So let's just take a walk around the local block first, shall we? And how would that make you feel? Oh yeah, that's really, I feel better. And so, well, let's go 2 blocks this time and see how you feel about it. So it's that incremental change. That's how you get that level of growth. Then
Yeah.
people buy into it.
Yeah. One bite at a time. And also, I think reaffirming that how the role and what they do is actually a key part of that. And that by enhancing that function, that it not only benefits them, but it enables, the collective growth within the organization amongst their team and the broader picture as well.
Change in the organization, it's the change in you, David. How open are you to change when you shift from being a consultant to being a portfolio executive? Because at one level, you're trying to make the same kinds of changes in an organization, but you now need to be different. What was it
Yeah.
like for you to try and be different when you were no longer, standing on that position of authority you had as a consultant?
Oh, it's scary. I think it's in the beginning, of course, because you begin to not doubt yourself, but to um, be prepared to be flexible and adaptable, for sure. So equally, I'm human like anybody else, so I can have I can be set in my ways, and so you have to be prepared to stand back and listen to the other point of view, of course, and hear it from. I had one today. I was on a call today, and I knew that what they were doing wasn't working, and it wasn't right. But from their perspective, they'd be doing it for years, so that then this is the way it works. But they weren't winning, so it had to be I had to adapt and understand why they were doing the things in the way they were doing. So yeah, flexibility, adaptability, from my perspective, was one of the things certainly that I've had to learn. I'm not always right either, but it's the alignment that I think one of we haven't really talked about. One of the most exciting things for me in doing what I do is bringing the alignment of people together. So what really I mean, obviously we all talk about, it is about numbers, it is about ROI, it is about process, it is about measurement, and so of course all of those things happen. But certainly in the world I've worked in international businesses, well, any business really, it's about the alignment of people, and so like you said, if you've got those people that believe in the dream over here and those that say no, I'm all right, thank you very much, It's how do you bridge that gap? And it's when you get that alignment of vision and sharing those values and sharing as go, my goodness me, that's when you start to see change.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I guess this is probably something, Charles, you've seen a lot, but many consultants worry about leaving the stability of consulting and retainers. Have you seen a common theme around that, Charles, in terms of when you've been speaking with many other fractionals around a similar pattern of that insecurity? Because David has shared with us how he's transitioned, which actually probably mitigated some of that worry in terms of how he's described his transition. But are there reoccurring issues that you see coming up in the conversations you have?
I think there are. I mean, there are two kinds of consultants that I support in the transition. There are those who are working as consultants within a consulting organization, and there they get a huge amount of security from their colleagues. They love being part of the team. They have a business development function that helps to get them work. Um, and often in these consulting businesses, there's this talk to one another where they're constantly bigging each other up and saying how stupid their clients are. I've been in one. I know what it's like. Um, it wasn't only Enron who thought they were the smartest people in the room. Um, so there's that part of it. And for those people, I think when they step out to be fractional, a bit like David was saying, the support system's not there. There isn't someone who's going to do your PowerPoint slides or arrange your meetings or, collect the bills or whatever, or even organize the conference for you to speak at. All of those things that you had for free, disappear.
Mm.
But the other people that I talk to are people who are already on that independent consulting journey. And for them, they are starting out with an existing network of people
Hmm.
who they go and tap and get busy with.
Hmm.
And they think this is easy, I just ring my friends up and they give me work. And that's true for a year or two. And then they actually have to do real business development. And suddenly it starts to get very, very scary because they haven't actually turned themselves into a brand and they haven't had enough time to find the next fashionable thing to fix. Because if they're in the find a problem, fix a problem, it's a fashion business and you constantly have to be on the next bandwagon. It's exhausting.
Really good point, Charles. Really good point, and I can attest to that as well as you can imagine. So for many years, I never looked for any business ever because it would always come as a referral from one to the other. I'd be moved in by a different investor or a different client and say, oh, by the way, I've got this other client over here that needs your expertise. So I just move. And then I think it was around the time of COVID. So when COVID happened, pre-COVID, I was spending my life on an airplane, from all over the world, traveling for different clients. Then COVID happened and it stopped almost abruptly within 3 months. Unfortunately for me, most of the clients I had at the time were retail-based clients or ultimately retail focused, so they were suffering. And I ended up with one client, and I then had to do as you say, then look for clients, and that was tough because even though I'm the person that's helping companies do that, when you're trying to do it for yourself, it's actually a different challenge because, as you say, you're too busy working with the client to spend the time to go out and do the focus on finding it. So that's definitely one of the challenges of being fractional exec than being a consultant. As you say, you haven't got a network around you to find that for you. I wish.
You wish, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, don't we all? I mean, building that structure into your weekly, monthly activities is a challenge because it's very easy to eat into the time that you want to allocate to fulfill client requirements. Or there's always something urgent or something unanticipated that crops up, particularly when you're working with a selection of clients at the same time. And it's very easy to, if we look at that old adage, to be, the tailor without a new pair of shoes
Yeah.
or a new coat because you're looking after everybody else and not look. And I can put my hand up at having made that mistake many times over because you get
Yeah.
so absorbed in fulfilling all those pressing needs for your clients.
To be honest, the only way I've broken out of it is having a pool of permalancers, freelance people who I engage on a long-term basis, who provide all of those support services that I don't have the time or consistency to do. So
Mm.
that's been my answer. Have somebody who does the videos, somebody who does the website, somebody who does the LinkedIn, somebody who does the content, somebody who does the AI technology, and so on and so forth. Because actually, then I can focus on working with clients and bringing new clients in, and all the support systems are being done by other people.
Mm.
And yes, I pay a significant amount every month not to have to worry about that stuff, but then I don't have to worry about it.
And it's productive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as someone who has worked with both consultants and fractional executives, what do you see as the key strengths of somebody who works in a fractional capacity?
And
So
particularly from the buyer's point of view, what do they get that they wouldn't get from a consultant, I suppose?
Yeah.
in the companies I've worked with, well, hopefully they would say the benefit is they've got the benefit of fairly deep expertise, specialist expertise, which is something we can come back to, but on a part-time basis, but with high impact. So in other words, if they were employing me full time, it would cost a lot of money relative to if we're talking, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 million sized businesses or that sort of mid cap business. Um, Whereas you'd still be effective, but it would be at a high cost. Whereas if I'm working for, a few days a month or whatever it may be, it's less actual time, less cost, but a higher return for the client. So if you're a business that is either, you're the C-suite of an organization or you're an investor in a company, in my case, they can get a high return very quickly, relatively speaking, quickly, without having to employ someone full time for that. But
Yeah.
the irony is that my clients typically last 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, not they're not full, but they'll last that time. I mean, maybe it's full on for the first year, and then over time and then it goes like a wave after that. They'll come back and say, oh, by the way, we need your help with
Mm.
something else. Can you come in and sort this out for us? Or we're just about to build a new division in this country or that country. Can you help us?
Mm.
Those are the kind of things that happen over time.
Something that's occurring to me, because a lot of it has come into the mix of where my work and probably yours too, Charles, would be interesting to get both your perspectives is if you are moving fast, but you're not in a full time in an organization, do you find that within your role you're doing a lot of internalization, knowledge transfer, and upskilling of some of the teams and people you work with, so that they can actually deploy more effectively some of some areas that might just be completely new to them? In your context, David?
So for me, oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. So more often than not, I've been um, making myself redundant over time.
Yeah.
There's expression I like to use in that. So I'm either maybe in the beginning they haven't got the people in place, and so I'm then helping them recruit the people to put it into place. Then I'm helping, maybe coach those people to become the leaders that they need to be. But yes, definitely you are skilling up that organization, and whether that's at the C-suite or
Mhm.
whether it's for me, whether it's the people in the sales organization or the marketing teams or account management or business development, whatever side of the business, you're skilling up that business because in order to get scale, you can't be or at least I'm not. I'm the sort of leader that if I can skill up 10 people, I'll get 10 times the result than if it's just me. And so my goal is always to do that, always to try and grow and grow the people that are in the company for sure. Well, it
Yeah.
works. I mean, like I say, I've got lots of. I'm happily now, after so many years, able to show all these hockey sticks and say, look at that. And this is how it happened, and it's
Yeah.
not a fluke. Yeah.
Exactly.
So do you think you would be advising more consultants to make this transition to become fractional executives?
I think so, because I actually think that there'll be more of a demand for fractional work than perhaps in the past, Charles. I think because of the nature of business, because of changing work practices, because of the globalization of business. So you expanded your pool of resource or your available resource. Companies are, the customer isn't. I think the customers aren't just around the corner in London anymore. They could be in somewhere in Hong Kong or Beijing or wherever it is in the world. And so the ability to draw on that skill, that expertise is more in demand. And so I think uh, the more people can do that, and but without having to employ full-time people,
Mhm.
it's in a sense it's almost taking less of a risk. So if you're a, I don't know, a 10, 15, 30 million pound business and you want to expand in Germany or France or Italy or Spain or whatever, and you're sitting. Well, I actually had a client exactly that situation with my medical client where they had no experience of doing that. Now they could actually go out and employ of someone full time and discovered that it didn't work, which is what they'd done prior to me getting it. Or they could say, well, actually, we'll take a fractional executive who's got that experience, who's been there and done it. They can come in and help them set up the infrastructure and skill up the people to do it, and then help the business grow. So I think there's going to be an increasing demand for fractional work as companies find their way around AI, they find their way around different work practices, they find their way around globalization.
But
Absolutely.
you've met other consultants, you've worked with consultants in large consulting firms. Is there a type of consultant who would really struggle with that transition?
Oh, definitely. Maybe forgive me for saying this, Charles, but probably people that have been in your background in large consultancies that have got, I've met, I won't say the companies, but certainly in the big four or five that are, that have got that network around them, so that they become that. There's a I won't say a breed, that's wrong, but um, uh, there's a world of consulting which is quite different from uh, and if you're that mid cap, I mean, 'cause I'm focused on mid cap businesses because that's where I work. So if you're in a mid cap business, could you afford to employ, a big five consultant anyway? No, you couldn't. Would that big five consultant be interested in you as a company? Probably not. Not unless you were a, really high growth AI or whatever the business is. And so I think those kind of consultants might struggle in making a transition. But having done it, I mean, I didn't come from that. I came from an internal consulting background rather than consulting firm. It's eminently possible, but it's a brave step to take for sure. But
Yeah.
I haven't looked back for one moment. I've enjoyed every minute of it and still do.
And when we reflect on where the world is going and the whole way in which people are engaged now for work, this probably has a better fit than it's ever had before. And in some respects, I often think, certainly in some of the conversations I have, that there's perhaps at a senior leadership level in the mid cap companies, there's perhaps not always an awareness that you can actually bring on board that level of expertise at a fraction, use the pun, of the fraction of the normal cost of actually hiring somebody in a full time capacity. And possibly that hasn't been considered, that you can actually get that muscle and skill set at that level, which you don't actually necessarily need full time, but can really have a huge impact on the business positively, very positive.
I think you're right, Lorraine. I mean, um, I've seen businesses where they think I'm a consultant.
Yeah.
So they assume that I'm a traditional consultant, and then nobody likes to use the term consultant. And I've been to businesses where they think I'm some super salesperson, that I'm a Superman with sales written across my chest, which I'm not. And so there's definitely a misunderstanding, a misconception of what fractional leadership is. where they get it, when they understand it, and in my world, it's been the M&A world where they absolutely understand it,
Mm.
then it's been highly productive for sure. But yeah,
And
I think what you guys are doing with your podcast is really important, because the more companies understand that this is available, that these kind of expertise are available to them to help them scale and grow, the better it's going to be.
So I have this rule of thumb, David. I'd be interested in your view about this, but I think a fractional executive like you can deliver 80% of the value at 20% of the cost in 10% of the time. And the reason I say that is people who are VP of marketing in a big corporate, they spend a lot of their time not doing marketing. They have to turn up at lots of meetings where the fact that they're an expert in marketing is irrelevant.
Yeah,
If you're the sales director, you have to go to all sorts of cross-functional, cross-cutting projects that don't drive the sales forward. And you have to turn up at client events which are not delivering any value, but you just need to show your face. And so you can be doing 60 to 80-hour week as
yeah,
a senior executive in a large corporate, and yet most of the productive work is the stuff you do at weekends when you don't have to be in the office.
yeah. You're right. And whereas as a fractional executive, of course, you are infinitely more focused on focusing on the particular result that client is looking for. So it's far more, but it is a risk, even for fractional. I know I've been there, where when over time, the risk for a fractional person is you become more involved, you get deeper involved, and you end up with your feet under that desk, and so you end up spending more time than you should be with a client. And that one of the things about being a fractional exec is being that I found not a challenge, but I've had to be really mindful of is time management with the client, is making sure that um, that the time I'm with the client is what you said. It's that 10% delivering 80% of the benefit to the client without doing all the, the unnecessary meetings or the paperwork. I mean, I had one client that was sending me 300 emails a day, and a day, and it was crazy. A day and I just said I mean they were CC this and CC that and it's just filling my inbox, and it's great, it's crazy. I said, that's not what I'm here to do. That's not why you employ me. And so those are the things that happen when you're inside the organization, that you can manage from as a fractional. Well, you have to manage because you're measured differently. It's about impact and output rather than input, if if that makes sense. So it's not about how many hours am I working,
yeah.
but so the day rate thing is a nonsense. It's not how many days am I going to work for you, or how many hours am I going to work for you. It's what's the outcome, what's the result that I'm what are we, not me, what are we trying to achieve, and tracking that result, tracking that performance. And what you said earlier on, big passion of mine, Lorraine, is about incremental growth, incremental change. If I want a sales organization to grow from 3% conversion to 30% conversion, it won't happen overnight. But I absolutely guarantee that incrementally I'll make it happen. But it's a step by step process. It's that growing process but that takes focus. When you're inside an organization and you're party to the internal politics of the organization, and all of those things that go on a day by day basis um, that externally you're not, and that's what brings value for the client, because then you're not involved in all of that, and therefore you can be more focused, and then the results speak for themselves. Yeah.
Well, the challenge is actually maintaining, because we're all human. As you get more and more involved with people, and particularly if this is the kind of work that really you enjoy doing, it's it's always easy to get pulled into more, and nature is to, well, how can I address this challenge, or how can I move this forward? And you end up like, it's actually a skill set in that you have to develop, a discipline in yourself to kind of do a regular check-in with yourself to go, am I getting pulled in too much here? And how do I transfer this back so somebody else is taking responsibility for managing this minutiae that I actually don't need to be involved in?
Yeah. Well, that's why I said earlier on about working with the client team.
Yeah.
So where it works well is where you've got like with the company I told you was in 27 countries. They had gosh, 300 or 400 salespeople inside their company, and therefore sales leaders, and country managers and so on. And so my work was more working with the country managers and the sales leaders, and and indeed work going on the streets with the salespeople as well. But it's more about um, helping other people grow and do what they do, because they ultimately they got to deliver it. It's not, that's why I joke about all these hockey sticks that I've got, that I just turn up at the right time when they're about to grow. But it's because it's the people inside the business that will make it grow and sustain. And what we're there to do as fractional people is to bring high expertise, and knowledge and experience very swiftly into their environment, that we can have that impact on their business. And with the right mindset, I mean, I've also had clients that on the front face, they like the idea of high growth
Yeah.
until they realize the amount of work that's involved in doing it, and that it's then that's a tough call. But when you get when those things are aligned, when you see, and that's why I love working in the M&A space, because the investors and the C-suite generally, they do want to make, they're merging businesses, they want these businesses to work, and the rate of failure of merged M&As is quite high. So there's plenty of opportunity to to get growth and change.
Uh,
David, you
Sorry, Charles. I was just curious to ask you, David, was you've just touched on something that probably given your area of expertise is probably higher risk in terms of the expertise you bring to the table than kind of maybe potential other fractional role contributions. But you've just touched on the level of failure of M&As. How do you mitigate that yourself when given, because that almost almost indicates that the area of expertise you bring to the table is higher risk than other fractional roles.
Well, I wouldn't say it was high risk. I would say that because I know where M&As fail,
Yeah.
this for me, and we can talk about this all day long, but for me, the key areas in the business in an M&A are, and who am I to say, because Charles is from this background, but doing the level of due diligence in the first place.
Yeah.
And I've got this passion about due diligence, of course, in terms of their numbers and their organization, the structure, but due diligence in the capability of the people in the organization to deliver the results. That's a big one for me. So that's the first thing. The second thing is about having the planning, the structure, the processes in place. And then it's about alignment of people. It's about bringing those people together wherever they are, whether it's a small organization or whether it's a multinational organization.
Yeah.
And because I think there's a stat somewhere that says 30% of the failure of an M&A is because they aren't aligned. They haven't got the people aligned to what the vision and the values are, or what their goals are. And so therefore, for people like me, I can come in fairly swiftly and identify that's the problem. I'm sure you find the same thing, Charles, in the world that you go in. You go into a business because you've been involved in so many different companies, and you know that those are the triggers that why M&As fail. And it's almost like a red flag holding up in front of you. You say, oh yeah, I can see where that is, and therefore you can go in very quickly and do something about it. So
yeah.
yes, there are these things in M&A, and I'm no, uh, I can't solve everything, but generally speaking, it's fairly clear what's causing those challenges. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
and it is, you can't turn everything around. Like I said, I had that company where, the guys in the UK didn't want to. I mean, they did in the end, but they didn't start that way. I've had other companies where, they just didn't. The client didn't didn't want to put the organization didn't want to put the effort into making the, they like the idea of growth, but didn't really want to make the effort in the long term and stay the course. But mostly, I suppose the frustrating thing for me in working with M&A is they will sell the business eventually.
Mhm.
That's kind of frustrating to me. After you've built the business, you help the business grow for 3 years, and then they sell it on, and then you think, but at least they're not selling it every 6 or 12 months, which is what was happening in my conglomerate days.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's something we all face, but I'd be particularly interested in your perspective, David, because listeners are asking us. You talked about the challenge of managing an individual client, but what do you do if you've got 4 or 5 clients on the go, and they all think they've got a crisis in the same month, or they all need to get the end of quarter results, or how do you balance these competing demands?
Being super clear about what you can do and when you can do it. I think being super clear about about your time management personally and with the client, because inevitably, whilst as fractional people, we could spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with one client, of course. But that's not what they employ us for. They employ us, so it's about delegation inside the organization. It's about very clear about what the ground rules are. So blocking time out in the diary is important, and being fairly resolute be careful how I say this, but resolute about time management with the client. So it's not if they got an emergency, I like to say that I'm available to a client, but if I'm, if in the middle of a workshop for half a day or with one client, then I'm not going to break into that for the sake of something else. So you have to, and that's probably one of the juggling acts that you have as a fractional person when you've got several clients on the go. I think the other slightly amusing one about when you have multiple clients is you're racing with one client, and then that session has stopped, and then 5 minutes later, you've got this different client who's got a different problem. And then your brain is having to switch to thinking, oh, where was it I was at the last time?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I guess that's just part of the excitement of it. But yeah, I think managing time well, managing the client well, and leveraging the resources that the client has got. I mean, you talked about having your network around you, but I think it's also, for me, it's about the network that's inside the client. If I got people inside the organization that I can work with, and that they're doing the delivery work, and I'm helping them do it, then that's fine. But yeah, time management is key.
And clarity around boundaries.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Blocking time out your diary
Yeah.
is, I mean, I had it with one client where, when I started, I said, I will not work for you on a Friday because because I've got other things, and I would guarantee that the CEO of this company would try to put things in my diary on that Friday all the time. And I absolutely guarantee it. And I would say no. And it, in the beginning, they didn't like it, but after a while, they got used to the idea that was the time when they couldn't get hold of me. I mean, unless it was an absolute emergency. But yeah, so it's about managing the time around the client. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we talk about this fractional stuff as, a new thing that's been emerging over the last 10 or 15 years. I'm reminded that actually barristers in a barrister's chamber have been fractional, way back to Dickens and before. And when I've worked with barristers, because I've been involved with some quite significant IT litigation, they have this extraordinary ability to completely concentrate for a short period of time on a particular thing, and
Yeah.
then walk out of the door and engage with something else. And it's this, ability to switch on a dime is extraordinary to watch.
But so important, Charles. Yeah. I mean, it's a bit like leadership, isn't it? It's your ability to, whoever you're talking with, that when I'm talking with you, I'm talking with you and I'm listening to you, nobody else, because you're the most important thing on this earth. And the same with the client. When you're having that conversation with the client, it might take me 5 or 10 minutes to switch my brain into gear into I'm going from this 27 country thing to, this problem that they've got in London or wherever it may be. But it's that ability to, I think, to be focused. I guess that's what barristers do, is that they know they being well prepared. So good documentation, making sure it's all the things about meeting management. I mean, I had it with the conversation earlier on with the client about when we have meetings, that they're documented. I don't mean the chapter and verse, but I mean the key actions that we agreed in the meeting, immediately documented.
Yeah.
I love Zoom for that, because it automatically tells me what we as this meeting will do. And so I think that's definitely really important. And I think I've had two or three people I've worked for over the years, fairly senior people today, that senior global people, and they all had this remarkable ability to. I had one guy I worked with that we bought this business in France, seven manufacturing sites in France, and for however he did it, I'm never quite sure he did it, but this chap was one of those that you were the most important thing on this earth when he was talking to you, no matter who you were. We'd walk into factories in France, and he'd remember somebody was on the shop floor. He'd remember their names. He'd remember their family. He'd talk about their children every time. And he didn't have a PA that was, at least not that I could see, it was able, but that level of focus and ability is what makes people engage, and that's yeah. So that's
Well,
really
that in
important.
itself is a skill, because I know myself from when you're working with different teams and you get to hear about minutiae or things that are going on at a more personal level, organizationally, or unavoidably, you start, hearing about what's going on in people's lives, both inside and outside of work. Remembering that detail can be a challenge.
Yeah. Or you're good. You have a good system to good PA, PAs. I'm sure my boss did then,
Not
but
everything.
I don't know what it was. But I think but it is important, and it's what I'm sure you're the same, Lorraine, today. I mean, the fact that I've got a network around the world is wonderful, and that's actually become more important to me. I mean, business is important, of course, but it's actually the network of people that I know, whether they're in Riyadh, or whether they're in Beijing or Hong Kong or Germany or France or wherever they are. They're close friends from many years. Yeah, and you're the same, Charles. I know, because of what you had done. And it's that ability that that's what builds the trust, and that's what makes people. I think that's what makes people warm to you in the first place. Not just how many clicks can you add onto their zeros at the end of the year. Yeah.
Yeah. A question we've had, which is always a challenge, uh, is, can you give some insight around the best way to market yourself as a fractional executive? What kind of tactics that have worked for you? Now, there are some things that I think are common to all, and then there are some that are unique to each individual by virtue of their personality or the area in which they work. Is there any insights you'd like to share in that context? Because you've shared that you have a very diverse global network, but is there some sort of structure around how you actually market yourself on an ongoing basis?
I think it's something I've had to learn
Hmm.
over the years, for sure. Like I said, because I didn't need to go out looking for business, because I had a network of people that would feed me business from referrals. But what I've had to learn uh, by trial and error in the past 5-10 years is be very clear on my LinkedIn profile, that people understand my LinkedIn profile. What do I stand for? And I definitely changed that a few times, or trying to figure out myself, what's the message that I'm delivering? What's my brand? Well, I mean, you know that better than any of us, because that's your area of expertise, Lorraine. But so understanding what my brand is, where am I focused? So being clear on LinkedIn what it is, being a thought leader. So I put out thought leadership posts
Yeah.
on LinkedIn where I can. I'll do a webinar for someone, or a round table with people, and talk about a particular subject.
Yeah.
And and I guess being able to convey that in whatever media. So it's the podcasts, it's the webinars, it's the structure of my LinkedIn profile needs to tell that story in a cohesive way. And maybe I've got it right, maybe I haven't got it right. I don't know, but that's certainly one of the things. It's a constant thing with me, trying to make sure that my message on LinkedIn, that the posts I make on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
are relevant to the audience that I'm delivering. That I'm delivering value to
Yeah.
people through that.
And that would be a common theme for all of us because
I
things
think so. Yeah.
go quickly.
Yeah. Definitely. But it's a it's not as a fractional. The risk with fractional, because you say, well, what industry you work in? Well, you know what? I've worked. Yeah, I focus on the IT industry. I've got a fair chunk of is IT, but the skill set that I have isn't necessarily the IT industry, because the skill. I've done the same thing with medical clients and very successfully. Done the same with pharma clients. And the same thing with telco clients. And the same with manufacturing. And so I've had to understand that and say, well, okay, I've got a depth of knowledge of the IT industry more than others. I've probably got a fairly good depth of knowledge of the medical sector, because that's an area I've worked in. I certainly got extreme deep knowledge of channels and distribution globally. So if I look at it instead of industry sector wise, I say, well, okay, so what is it that what's that one thing that I've done more than anything else, and it's probably global distribution, sales distribution, and sales distribution, M&A, mid cap, and those are the areas. So for me, that's where I try to get that message across through my profile.
So this you would be then really staying on message around these key areas, whether it's in a podcast, whether
Yeah,
it's in a piece of thought leadership, where it's where you might comment on posts in relevant channels, where you show up, where you might contribute a piece of editorial. You're staying on topic all the time in the areas in which you have a real
yeah,
domain depth of expertise.
yeah. Especially when you've got 10 clients you're trying to juggle at the same time. Yes.
Actually, as a matter of fact, Charles, given your area too and the background in all this context, and given that this is a perennial question, and you probably see it coming up all the time, what would you add to that in terms of how do you really get your message out there, engage and build a robust? Uh,
One thing that I think people often overlook is you need to have a point of view,
yeah,
ideally, which is a little bit off center. And the second thing is, it's good to have a cause which is related to what you do, but
yeah.
is not part of what you do.
Would
So if I think about how, I've done that as an example, then I have a point of view about freedom and joy at work versus toil and slavery. Um, and the potential that when you come into that freedom and joy, then actually you can offer more love to people that you
yeah,
care about. So that's a point of view.
yeah,
Having love as a word in your LinkedIn profile is not standard corporate behavior.
yeah,
So that's the point of view. The second thing, which is the cause, which is not what I do, but it's related to what I do, is the whole challenge of ageism. So
yeah,
I've got a point of view and I've got a cause. And I think for many of us, that does create some kind of distinctive.
yeah,
The person who did this very successfully as a very early sort of CEO thought leader was Richard Branson.
yeah.
He always had a point of view,
Yes.
and he often had a cause, whether it was destroying British Airways or whatever it might be. But, you know, it played very well for him. And I think it meant that he was much more than just somebody who made a lot of money.
Yeah, I agree. This personality was really important, wasn't it? That's really interesting, Charles, because if I think of it, because I haven't thought of myself in that way, but if I have a cause, it's about the disparity of poverty and wealth, about the disparity of knowledge. So I work with, well, I mean, I work with charities in on the African continent with people, and I'm alarmed at the disparity, not on intellect, nothing, not at all, but in the, where if I can provide the knowledge and skill that I've got to some people who haven't got a fraction of the wealth that we got here, that would be my cause for sure, because I think that's really important in the world, to bring wealth into developing nations that this isn't there for lots of reasons. But that would be. But I haven't never really thought about what I do in that way. But it's an interesting interest, because I don't do that. I don't talk about that on LinkedIn either. But maybe I should. Yeah.
I think it's worth talking about it because it becomes back to a fundamental principle in brand strategy or developing any brand is so this would be something that anybody who's a fractional executive or aspiring to become one is thinking about things in terms of, if you really want to stand out, being vanilla and blending in isn't really going to work. So you have to have a strong view or something with which you truly resonate, but which you can talk about with authority, and you have got a length of runway on which to engage. It's a bit like what I call associating with that very British product, which I call the Marmite factor of there's no middle ground. You either love it or hate it.
Hmm.
And I think it behoves all of us, but I know from a fundamental brand strategy point of view that there has to be something with which you really hang your flag on, and that it's something that you can talk about very consistently.
Interesting. 'Cause I've never really thought of it in this way, but so that focus for me, Lorraine, has always been about the people in a company, always, because where I saw business in my conglomerate days, where they would buy and sell, so it was asset stripping, and it was putting fear into people, so people would work. It was the slavery thing, Charles, effectively.
Yeah.
Um, where and compare that with a world where the companies are not perfect by any means, but companies actually cared about their people, are actually interested in building relationships and building alignment. Then those businesses performed. The companies I work with performed remarkably well. And so I talk about planning process and people. If you haven't got a planning, whether it's a one-page plan or 1,000 pages, it doesn't matter. But as long as you've got a plan,
Yeah.
you haven't got the processes in place. The processes are like the foundations of building a house. If I ain't got the foundations, then forget it. I'm not going to build a 10-story house.
Yeah.
However, the people part is where the magic happens, and
Yeah.
so that that's my passion, is bringing the people together, and whether that's at a personal level, whether it's one individual that I'm helping grow, or whether it's bringing that like the work I'm doing in Zimbabwe and Kenya, though, to help other people grow in what they're doing, in whatever way it is. That's a passion for me, and I've seen it over and over and over again. That's the thing that makes people work. So I was to hang my hat on a cause, Lorraine, that would be the one for sure.
So in the context of everything you've shared and your successes, David, is there and the rate at which we have so much change going on, and that's accelerating change, it's certainly not going to slow down. How do you see the fractional or portfolio executive model evolving over the next few years?
I think you'll see more of us for sure.
Mhm.
I think we become more specialized. I
Yeah.
think we've become so we need to, like, you use the term the vanilla. We can't be just a vanilla. I can't be just a vanilla CRO
Yeah.
in a company, because there's lots of people out there that can claim to be CROs. So um, in my case, it is mid cap, international distribution, and M&A. So that's my That's my area of specialization.
Hmm.
I guess you could add an industry sector, but. And so we're going to necessarily see more of us. It will become more involved. It's an increasingly global market, not just big businesses now, but small companies relatively small companies are in a global market. So they need that expertise. There's going to be more of us, but we'll necessarily become more niche focused in the delivery that we can bring to companies, I would think. And you think,
Is there
Charles, are you?
So I think that all of those things are true. I think the other thing which is really interesting, when I started out supporting people, I thought my target was people in their early to mid 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started using the term second half career. So that was 45 plus.
Mm-hmm.
increasingly I'm talking to people in their late 30s and early 40s who actually love this idea. They've already started to run out of road in their corporate careers. It's too inflexible to be locked into the way that a conventional recruitment process works. And this allows them to break out, take their skills and move sideways, and move outwards and to move upwards, which with a conventional career, the only way you can do that is to go off and spend, 20 or 30,000 pounds on a master's program and then reinvent yourself that way, probably 2 years of your life. So I'm surprised, but it is coming younger and younger.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, Charles. I can understand that happening. One question I'd have for you is that in that though, that is there an inflection point where experience counts? So in other words, so for me, forget the age part, but the fact that I can say that I've worked in, 20, 25 odd companies in multiple countries, in 47 different countries, and had that experience of, gosh, we got this wrong over here, didn't we? And we fixed it in this way. So that hands-on experience, as opposed to theoretically, I know what to do, but but I haven't actually felt the pain of getting it wrong, and therefore I know how to fix it. Is there an inflection point, you think?
I think experience is important, absolutely important. You talked about more specialization, and that means you can have very deep experience in a narrower field,
Right.
and you can acquire that, over a relatively short period of time. The second thing is, there are people who are engaging this who left school at 16. By the time they're 26, they've got 10 years of experience.
Yeah,
At the
that's
point
true.
that, lots of people are taking their second gap year and wondering what they're going to do with their lives,
Yeah,
and have never really worked for money before. So, those people have got 10 years ahead, and they're coming into all sorts of industries. And so they've got 20 years experience by the time they're in their second half of their 30s.
yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
so yeah, it is. And more people are learning their trade actually by doing these side hustles in their teens. So the person who runs all my social media, she started doing a side hustle in her teens.
Yeah,
And about influencer, at a very young age. And so she's now got, I don't know, 15, 20 years experience in social media, but not old enough to have that experience.
And I think all of that's been enabled by the fact that we now have such a digitized, connected world.
yes.
And you couldn't have done this 20 years ago, but now
Absolutely. Lorraine, the fact that for me, because I'm at the other end, of course, in age terms, it's what an incredible bonus to be online, to be connected. That means that age is completely irrelevant for me. It's the fact that I can work whenever and wherever, as long as I'm keeping, which I do, of course, through the clients, but as long as I'm keeping abreast of, of what my clients do, what's happening in the world, and having a voracious appetite for understanding more AI, which I do,
yeah.
then I think it's a huge benefit.
Thank you so much, David, for sharing so many insights and probably giving lots of food for thought, and also giving people a much clearer sense of how they can embrace that, whether they are a potential client or buyer considering engaging with fractional executives, and that huge value that could actually be brought with a very affordable level of investment. And also for then perhaps professionals and consultants who haven't really thought about this as an opportunity, because you've covered both areas. So thank you. That's been really interesting.
Thank you.
Can you tell our listeners where they can find you and learn more about your work as a fractional executive?
Yeah, they can certainly find me through you, of course, but also on LinkedIn. You'll find me at David Parry, on David Parry 2 on LinkedIn. And you'll find me on my website, which is smartbrg.com. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much indeed, David. And that's it for today's episode of the Fractional Frontier. We hope you found the conversation insightful.
Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn for more exclusive content. and catch the edited episode on all major platforms. And don't forget to subscribe. And if you enjoyed today's discussion, leave us a review or share the episode with your network.
Thanks for exploring the fractional frontier with us, where leadership knows no boundaries.